and Yetunde Adeseluka Oladejo. She's the convener, Girl Scouts Initiative. These three partners have four things in common. The first one is that we are all young people running youth-led organizations in different states. And the second one is that three organizations are focusing on the rights of women and girls. And the third one is that we all work in the same thematic area, which is providing information and services towards the advancement of the sexual and reproductive health and rights of women and girls. And there is one unique thing that connects the three of us, and that's the fact that we are all fellows in the 2023 Innocent Chukwuma Social Impact Fellowship. So that's where you can see that this is being supported by the fellowship. So I say thank you all for joining this session, and we urge you to please stay to the end and engage. While the speakers are speaking, if you have any comments or suggestions, you can drop them in the chat box. And when it's time to address that, we will come to it. Thank you so much. And I say over to you, Yetunde.
Hi, Nkechi. Thank you so much for that very amazing introduction speech you just gave. Thank you so much, and thank you to all of our speakers. I will just go straight to the point and introduce our amazing speakers for today's celebration of the International Youth Day, where we will be engaging and be having robust conversation on youth engagement in addressing period poverty, not only in Nigeria, but all over the world. Our very first speaker today is an amazing woman who is this executive director of Virgin Heart Foundation. She is Peace Dike. Peace Dike is the executive director of Virgin Heart Foundation, and it's a woman and a youth-led organization. She is a broadcast journalist and a media consultant. She enjoys women's advocating for the rights of women and girls in Nigeria. Peace Dike, through an initiative, she has been advocating for the rights of women and inclusiveness, gender justice, and improving girls' sexual and reproductive health and rights in Nigeria. Thank you so much, Peace Dike, for making our time to come for this webinar today. Next on our list is Dr. Ibrahim Banaru. Thank you so much, sir, for coming to this webinar today. He is the Family Medicine Senior Registrar, Ahmadu Bello University Teaching Hospital, Zaria, Nigeria. Dr. Ibrahim is a dedicated family physician. He is a researcher. He is also a human rights activist with a profound commitment to health equity, including women's well-being. And he has a lot of wealth of experience in addressing women's rights and inclusiveness in Nigeria. He's passionate about health equity. He's passionate about women's, equality in Nigeria, and he has collaborated with a diverse stakeholders in the NGO space, and also including the scientific communities, public agencies, and NGOs. He has also served on the advisory board of UNFPA Nigeria, where he honed the skills in conceptualizing and promoting innovative development strategies. Currently, Dr. Ibrahim holds positions on the boards of numerous organizations and thematic working groups, such as Nigeria's largest youth-led advocacy group, focused on preventing sexual and gender-based violence, and public health thematic group of the Nigeria Economic Summit Group, Policy Commission. Thank you so much today, Dr. Ibrahim, for gracing this event for us. Next speaker on our list is Ms. Nkechi Eloshi, Ms. Nkechi Eloshi Kani. She is the head of programs, Action Aid Nigeria. Ms. Nkechi is a feminist, a social justice, and a gender advocate with over 20 years of programming and leadership experience. She currently heads of program in Action Aid Nigeria. Prior to assuming that role, she was the manager, Women's Rights Program in Action Aid Nigeria, where she provided strategic leadership in the delivery of Action Aid's commitment to gender equity program in Nigeria. Ms. Nkechi, she has earlier served in various capacities and at Action Aid, where she gave a 360-degree view in programming, management, and leadership. Thank you so much again, Ms. Nkechi, for coming to this event today. And our last speaker today is Rizma But. She is the co-founder and the chief operating officer of 1 Million T-shirts. She is passionate about women capacity development. She's passionate about community upliftment, and this drove her to confound the organization called 1 Million Teachers, an organization focused on empowering educators and providing inclusive education globally. She's also an adjunct professor at Queen's University and St. Lawrence College, where she imparts her knowledge and expertise to aspiring minds. She has also collaborated with a lot of non-governmental organizations to provide free education to underprivileged children in Pakistan. Join me today to welcome all of our speakers, amazing speakers, Ms. DK, Dr. Ibrahim, Mrs. Nkechi, and Whitman Bro. Thank you so much, Nkechi. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Yetunde. So, Nicholas, you can commence the session, please.
All right. Good day, everyone. Thank you so much, Yetunde. Thank you so much, Nkechi. A warm greeting to every person who's joined us on this impactful section. Thank you so much, and I will be privileged to moderating this section, and to take us out further as the first speaker is Peace DK. Thank you so much, ma. Over to you, ma'am.
Please, DK, can you please unmute your mic? Your mic is muted.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, participants. And IWOGRA, I want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to be on this space. Happy International Youth Day to all the youth over the world in Nigeria who are doing amazing things, including improving women's Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, it's better now.
Okay. I might have to go again. I said good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon to everyone, and happy International Youth Day to all the youth all over the world doing amazing things all over the world in your organizations, improving the women's rights, girls' spaces, and all of that. And I also want to thank IWOGRA for giving me the opportunity to be on this space. Thank you so much, IWOGRA, for all you do. I also have to appreciate, I saw some of my big mentors in the house. I saw Vivian FM Bassi. I saw Nkechi Ilochi Kani. These amazing women. I didn't even know I was going to speak before Nkechi Ilochi Kani. Such a beautiful privilege. Thank you so much, ma. I'm happy to share this space with you. Okay, I want to start. Today is International Youth Day, and the IWOGRA has given us opportunity to discuss on period poverty, how youth can come together, rally around to end period poverty. I have few experiences as a girl child, while growing up as a girl child. I was a survivor. Can I say I was a victim? But now I can say I was a survivor of period poverty. At age 12, when I first at puberty, seeing my menstruation, it wasn't funny enough. I had to go through a lot of things, a lot of using of rags and then tissues, and no proper education about my sexual reproductive health, right? I was only told if I ever go out with a man, I'm going to get pregnant. That was the only education I ever received at age 12. And because of that, I disassociated with myself with anything that has to do with boys. I was so scared because I do not want to be shame to my family. I don't want to be the reason why my mother would cry. So I grew up with that fear that I could be, something might go wrong if I ever had to associate myself with a boy. But the point now is this: I was not given. Was issues and peppers, rags to use to protect myself during menstruation. Sometimes they fall off the way when I'm walking on the road. So these things happen. And then I grew with so much fear, stigma, shame, and I wasn't comfortable. I didn't have it all, but because no one was providing sanitary pad for me, and no one was even tutoring me or even educating me on what I have to face as an adolescent girl. And I have to grow with those shame and stigma for a long time. So fast forward to 2017, when I started my initiative, my organization, I had in mind to correct those abnormalities. So I started working towards helping young people to discover themselves. I had so many sensitization programs on sexual reproductive health rights, sexual education. I help people who have been children defied, people who have passed through sexual harassment to get them justice. So a lot of things because of my past experiences. I never want any other girl to pass through what I passed. I went through while growing up as an adolescent girl. It was so difficult. It was so difficult. I understood what exactly it means to be poor. What I mean to be poor, I had to menstruate for a long time with that bad. So it was that bad. At the time, I was infected because I had no hygienic means of, going through this adolescent age. My dignity was in fact, it was so messed up. I have discomfort. So my experiences is like experiences 1 million or millions of girls out there are going through. Millions of girls who are from impoverished homes, poor homes, who cannot afford menstrual supplies, who cannot afford education, who cannot have support because of financial constraints. So pure poverty makes it difficult for millions of girls to manage their menstruation in dignity and comfort. The challenges they face, or a lot of girls who are into or have grown into poverty and do not have these supplies. They have a lot of, because of unhygienic supplies that can cause them infection, stigmatization, the taboo, and social norms associated with menstruation. My so-called titled man would say, whenever she is menstruating, is that yes.
I don't know if it's my own network.
Are you here?
I think it's the presenter, please. It's our own network, not ours.
Okay. Hello, peace. Are you there?
Hello, please, DK. Sorry, your network is kind of infiltrating. Are you there, ma? Hello?
Can I suggest that she should change her location, please? Can I suggest that she should change her location, please?
Hello, peace.
Okay.
Please, can you change your location?
Everyone?
It's still breaking.
Good afternoon. I think I would suggest that she turns off her microphone, her video, That will reduce the broadband usage.
Hello,
Okay.
ma'am. Please, Nike, can you please turn off your camera and just make use of your audio to enhance good network connection, please? Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
You
Okay,
can hear
thank
you
you.
now, loud and clear.
Okay, very well, very well. I have to put off the video. Okay, I had shared my personal experiences as concerned to period poverty and the social norms associated with that. I don't know where I was cut off from or where the network started fluctuating, but I understand that period poverty is the lack of access to menstrual supplies. Menstrual supplies, education, now, period poverty also makes it difficult for girls, not just Nigerian girls, all over the world. Millions of girls are there to manage their menstruation or to go through their monthly flow with dignity and comfort. The challenges include the affording hygienic menstrual supplies, inadequate education on sexual reproductive health rights, their stigma, taboos, and social norms surrounded with menstruation. We have had occasions where titled men, especially I know very well in our own Igbo land, sometimes we tell their wives not to near them or even cook for them, serve their food because they are menstruating. And some instances where girls were being stigmatized within the family because of menstruation. So these are some of the social norms associated with it. But the consequences of period poverty, it goes beyond the physical discomfort. It goes beyond the physical discomfort. We see sometimes that these girls go through mental health. Their self-esteem is in that. It indignifies them and overall well-being. And sometimes you see these girls missing schools, they have to deal with a lot of cramps, they have to, because they can't afford pass, they can't go to school with racks and maybe towels or tissues. They have to stay at home for the period of days they are going to go through their period, their cycle, and then they will resume school. So this has a way of affecting the education of our girls. So period poverty, I know very well, is deep-rooted in social and economic inequalities. Of course, where women cannot afford, we are not talking about poverty. Some homes can hardly afford 2 square meals, not to talk about using the money they could use to feed themselves to get part for their girl children. So this is as a result of poverty, lack of proper menstrual products, which can lead to unhygienic practices. Yes, of course. I told you of my story where I was even infected because all through my years as a teenager, I did not have the opportunity to use pads. I never had the opportunity to use pad. I was using rags, was using tissues, and as a result of that, I was infected. So the effort to combat period poverty goes in hand also to destigmatize, because there's a lot of stigma associated with a period poverty. I've heard stories in one of my campaigns in school where a girl boldly told us that she was defied because an uncle promises to give her money to get sanitary pad. That is so serious, and that alone dehumanized me. I felt so bad that this could, as cheap as pad or whatever it is, could get again in such situation. So we find out that these are what happens to our guests out there. Some of them, they never voice these things out, but these things are obvious. It happens out there. Men are taking advantage of our girls because of sanitary pad. Now, poverty, just like I mentioned, is very critical. It's very critical. That is why
Hello, are you there?
this meeting is also important to start global. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
you.
Can I
thank you.
That you can change another network, please? If this network is not proper, it's not working properly.
But you can hear me right now, right?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Better now.
Okay. So period poverty is not a matter of addressing health concern. We should look beyond the health concern and look into advancing gender equality and social justice. gender equality and social justice. So the question of why we are having this conversation today is, how would the youth come together, youth-based organizations, how will young people come together to end period poverty? Now, period poverty, whenever, if we are going to think on how to discuss to end period poverty, there are so many things it can also address. It can help us address issues related to women's rights, like gender equality, like I've mentioned before, where girls can have access to education. You have instances where girls are not going to school or stop going to school for a few days to address sanitary part or hygienic sanitary supplies. So where girls can have access to education, opportunities to participate among their peers. Addressing period poverty, we can also contribute to inclusiveness, equitable and empowered society. Also addressing stigma, norms, social norms, and also empower our girls, especially on their reproductive health rights. Some of them cannot make safe decision, informed decision about their sexual reproductive health rights. Young people can start working towards advocacy. They can form teams where they can go and raise awareness on period poverty, and also to push for policy changes. These things are possible. Young people have this unhindered voice. It's like a force. We are like force. When we can have a voice. When we speak, the entire nation would hear us. Young people can decide to go through the social media and start making all the noise, and then someone will be able to hear us. Make all the noise, call out our leaders, tell them, policymakers, begin to have conversations on how we can come together and mitigate the issues as it concerns period poverty. Because we're not just looking at the part, we're not just looking at the health of women and girls, we're not just looking at the supplies, we're looking beyond that. We're looking where we can have inclusiveness, equality, where we can have education of the girls unhindered. So we are looking at young people who be innovative, very, very innovative, people who have creative mind, can come together to, see a way they can create an affordable path for girls and women. I think I have begun given time to stop, but I think these are the few things our young people can do beyond having this conversation. We can think of a way to make life better for girls. So thank you so much. I have been told to stop. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ma. Thank you so much, Ma. It was literally so unfortunate. Our network infiltrated your impactful section, but notwithstanding, you made your impact, you made your point, and we appreciate your disposition. And we also want to believe you also gave a very remarkable points of action on the engagement of youth as it regards or relates to period poverty. Thank you so much, Ma, and God bless you. So our next speaker, speaking next is going to be Dr. Ibrahim. And before I hand over to Dr. Ibrahim, thank you, sir. So the focal points for these conversations will give around how our panarchies, social cultural norms and beliefs around menstruations have excavated gender inequality and compromised women and girls' ability to manage menstruation hygienically and with dignity, as well as also possible health challenges that women and girls experience as a result of period stigmatization and sanctions. How young men and boys have an essential role in effective menstrual hygiene programs and access various initiatives to engage young men and boys in menstrual hygiene management, water sanitation, and period management interventions. And also the importance of engaging young men and boys in ending period poverty. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Ibrahim. It's such a warm privilege having you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Nicholas, for the very warm introduction, and earlier the speaker that introduced us. and happy International Youth Day to everyone. A lot of people may be wondering why are we discussing menstrual hygiene today and management when it's International Youth Day. The thing for this is International Youth Day is green skills for youth towards sustainable society, so sustainable development. You can see that from the conversations that we had earlier and from the discussion that we will be having with me today, you realize that there's so much nexus between menstrual hygiene, water sanitation, and hygiene, as well as sustainability. So definitely, it's rightful today on the occasion of the International Youth Day to speak about this silent epidemic of menstrual poverty. I'll call it a silent epidemic because it's there in the background. Millions of girls are having problems managing their menstruation. And it may interest you to know that it's only recently that's at the wake of the millennium, around 2004, 2005, that organizations within the international community like UNICEF, the UNFPA, started conversations around menstrual hygiene. And then women and girls have been subject of menstrual poverty long before now. But you can see that it's really an issue that needs to be discussed. My point of conversations today is surrounding patriarchy, social cultural norms, as well as coming from the health background to talk about those health issues that may arise as a result of menstrual poverty. We can see that patriarchy are social cultural systems that privileges maleness over femaleness, and it enforces that negative masculinity of domination of women, whereas there are some roles ascribed to men and those ascribed to women that subordinate women and make them dependent on men. So this sociocultural beliefs, accentuates menstrual poverty, which we've had the definition for what menstrual poverty entails. That's when women and girls do not have adequate information, adequate facilities, adequate support to support healthy menstruation. Menstruation, as we know, is a physiological phenomenon that girls go through by the time they attend menarche. Menarche is when they attend that puberty period, around the ages of 9 to 11. It's a spectrum. So from that age until they attain menopause, that's the time the menstruation ceases. So it's a physiological phenomenon. That means it's a normal, healthy thing for a person that is biologically female to go through that. But there are, beyond that physiology and health, there are these social constructs around menstruation, and those negative aspects of them, like the patriarchy, which subordinates women, accentuates the poverty of menstruation. So in this regard, people see menstruation as a taboo, as a cause, as a disease, or source of impurity for women. When these things exacerbate, girls could be isolated, hidden, or silenced because they are menstruating. And in this situation, some of them are restricted from certain activities, eating certain foods, so being able to socialize or even attend school, as the case may be. And this, they find their roots, these discriminations find their root embedded in ethno-religious beliefs that are consequential to women's well-being. So these sociocultural issues lead to a cascade of events, starting from lack of access to accurate information and education and communication about menstrual health by women. Of course, because menstruation is seen as, culturally seen as a taboo. So there's no open communication and information. Just like we are having conversation over this webinar today, there are, like I mentioned, until 2004, 2005, there are no avenues like that to openly communicate about information and accurate information and education about menstrual hygiene. And, so this sociocultural issues accentuate this lack of information. The lack of access to affordable, safe, and appropriate menstrual products such as pads, tampons, and cups. Of course, if there is no information, it means we do not even have the statistics to know that a lot of women, as a UNICEF and WaterAid study recently of women and girls in secondary school do not have access to menstrual hygiene products, as access to the pads, and then they do not have accessible water and toilet facilities. About 80%, 83% of them do not have toilet facilities within their schools to be able to have safe periods during their monthly cycles. So you can see that the statistics is quite worrisome. And these are all about the social constructs, negative social constructs surrounding menstruation. We mentioned lack of access to adequate water and sanitation, such as toilets, facilities, hand washing stations within the school facilities, or within communities and even organizations. Lack of support and empathy. Respect for women and girls during this time of the month that they experience this monthly physiological flow. And then increased risk of infections and health concerns. So we can now look at what are the possible health challenges women and girls may experience as a result of menstrual poverty. So there are two major things that we'll look at that accentuates health challenges associated with menstruation. Of course, we know that during the menstrual period, there could be health challenges that are manageable. For instance, a girl or a woman could have dysmenorrhea, that's pain during menstruation, but if there are adequate support, she gets pain relief and some adequate rest to be able to pull through that. And then there are others that could have heavy flow, which we call menorrhagia, which is also manageable. But these other items that I want to really discuss are health challenges that are as a result of this poor menstrual hygiene management, which could be seen broadly under two situations. We have period stigmatization and period sanction. So what is period stigmatization? It refers to negative attitudes and behaviors or practices towards menstruating women, whereas period sanctions are those restrictions or limitations imposed on menstruating girls and women. So we can see how we have the stigmatization on one hand and sanction on the other hand. It tells you that in as much as the stigmatization is somewhat like a passive activity, because you will just be at one side and be stigmatized. But those sanctions are even active things, limiting these girls to access to proper menstrual hygiene. So when this intersectional issues come together, there are a barrage of health issues that could arise. So I would categorize them so that we can have a sense of understanding. I will categorize some as broadly physical and mental. So under the physical, we have reproductive tract infections, such as bacterial vaginosis and candidiasis. These infections can be caused by poor menstrual hygiene practices, such as using unclean and unstable menstrual products like rags and newspaper, papers. The first speaker mentioned that she sadly is a survivor of this type of unavailability of products. So even changing the menstrual pads infrequently can lead to this reproductive tract infection. So we can see that beyond health, there is that socioeconomic aspect because even the girl that could afford to get a single pad might need more than one per day. So which shows that there's also an economic aspect to it, economic deprivation. So if she's unable to afford more than the number that she requires, she could still be a subject or a victim to this reproductive tract infection. On the other hand, there is also urinary tract infection, cystitis, pyelonephritis. These are infections starting from the urinary bladder up to the kidney that produces the urine. This infection can be caused by poor practices, also contaminated, contamination by prolonged use of pads or other unhygienic menstrual products. We have also pelvic inflammatory disease. There are serious infections of the reproductive tract that could subsequently predispose a woman to infertility or ectopic pregnancy, as the case may be. And this also, related to this unsafe or unhygienic products. There are serious infections like toxic shock syndrome. Like I mentioned, a girl or a woman that would require more than one pad or a tampon. This toxic shock syndrome comes from, it's a serious bacterial infection that affects the whole bloodstream. And it starts just from maybe an prolonged use of a tampon that gets infected and then gets into the bloodstream. You can imagine how pervasive that could be. There are other indirect health issues like anemia that can be as a result of those heavy menstrual flow that I earlier mentioned. And another sense that I've read a study that reported that some girls tend to deliberately not eat to lower down their nutritional capacity so that they delay menstruation. And this is still an issue of menstrual poverty. So they may end up having anemia and being easily susceptible to diseases because of poor nutrition, just to avoid menstruation. And then we come to the menstrual, the mental health challenges that could be as a result of stigmatization. Girls that do not have adequate information, the time they start menstruation, that's the time they attain that puberty, menarche, without adequate support, they can have anxiety disorders, and some of them can even slip into depression because the UNICEF study I earlier mentioned reported that girls, reported poor self-esteem and inability to attend class because they've seen their colleague or they themselves suffer stained clothing while unexpectedly seeing their period. So this leads to serious mental health issues. Okay, I'm being prompted that my time is fast approaching. So let me just quickly round up. So sometimes when we are speaking about things that we're quite passionate about, we tend to forget that it's still time bound. So how do young boys and men get engaged? We have, looking at the education too. This program that we are having today, it's also an important aspect of it, bringing together men and women, boys and girls, to discuss about menstrual hygiene and also profile homegrown solutions, just like we've had the amazing things that these people from the private sector, the civil society organizations are doing to support menstrual hygiene. So I will give, just as a way of call to action, looking at for the government is to develop policies and strategies and guidelines regulating menstrual hygiene management to allocate adequate resources in terms of budgetary allocation, because it goes beyond just the health aspect, but social and economic aspects as it is. And for the civil society organization, we thank IWOGRA and other organizations, because we need to have this kind of forum fora to further discuss and amplify the issue of menstrual hygiene management. For the private sector, they need to come into support in terms of the menstrual products. There are a lot of startups that are doing social services in terms of reusable parts, and then media organizations, religious organizations, communities. And just to conclude, is to say that menstruation is not a cause or a disease or a weakness or a shame. It is a natural, normal, and healthy part of the life of a woman and a girl, and the world population should come to align with all stakeholders to ensure that girls and women have a safe and healthy menstrual period. Thank you very much. I'm sorry that I had to hurry about time, but it's just about having the passion to really speak. Thank you very much, IWOGRA, for having me today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ibrahim, for that awesome delivery. Like significantly, like it is so much of an essential notion that the male genders literally get more sensitized, get more aware, and get more involved and engaged to period poverty. And without a doubt, I learned a lot. And I know also every single person here also had their takeaway from your section. Thank you so much for jumping on this section. We appreciate your disposition and your availability. So our next speaker right now is going to be Mrs. Nkechi. Mrs. Nkechi, thank you so much, ma, for availing yourself. And the point of our focus for Mrs. Nkechi is why ending period poverty should be everybody's business, why mothers can fight period poverty and taboos to promote menstrual health and rights, the roles of mothers in preparing youth for the prevention and elimination of period poverty. Mrs. Nkechi, thank you so much for joining us, ma. You'll be speaking for just 15 minutes. Thank you so much, ma.
Thank you so much. I'm going to keep it very succinct and brief. Thank you for the opportunity to speak alongside great speakers who had already delved into the conversation. I would ask our indulgence to please allow me to turn off my video. I just turned it on so you see that I'm not a robot, so that internet will not disrupt us. Today seems like the day that they've all descended on us for poor service. Okay, so I believe that has been granted. So the question around why should this conversation or this issue be everyone's business? I think for the very first instance, for the sake of humanity, right? For the sake of dignity, this is everyone's cause. If we truly believe in human rights and the dignity of all persons, we must therefore recognize that it is our collective responsibility that everybody, every girl, every woman has access to the basic things they need in playing their role as a woman or as a female. So if we are talking about right, there is no right that is important than the other, right? We believe in the principle of inalienability of rights, interdependence of rights. That gives us the reason or the impetus to say that everybody must recognize that they have a role to play in advancing women's access to sanitary towels and to the services, water, sanitation that they require, and to do that within the boundaries of dignity. My second point is about the fact that as development actors, and even as individuals who perhaps some of us are not in the cycle of development, but as those who have critical or interests, whether it's health service providers or NGOs and the likes, our intervention approach must shift. And it can never, I've always argued that it can never be linear, right? it must shift for us to begin to employ and look at addressing this issue from an intersectional feminist lens, doing our analysis and also ensuring that that is reflective in our programming. So if I'm responding to gender equality, if I'm responding to SDG, if I'm responding to whatever it is we are responding to, we must and we cannot, cherry pick on which specific issue that we should respond to otherwise. Of course, I recognize the need for expertise and for focus, but this is where the referral pathway becomes very critical in the work we do. So if, for instance, my organization is not focusing on issues of provision of services, for instance, how have I built my network with other actors who are providing such services? In a situation that someone comes to me, I can refer that same person to the services that they require. So this is my own position to the question around why this is everybody's business. It is their business, it is my business, because we are all related, we are all interconnected as human beings. And what hurts one person hurts the other person. And we must fight or seek to solution collectively. Nigeria has signed on to the SDG and other international regional frameworks that promotes gender equality. So if we are saying that we want to make a significant shift or result in those areas, then we must begin to think holistically that if, as women and as girls, what are the things that they require to grow up in a safe environment, in a dignified manner that does not reduce their person or their dignity or their agency as human being. This is critical and important. Now, in speaking to the role of how mothers can fight poverty, period poverty, and the related taboos to promoting menstrual health, I think that sometimes when we have some of these conversations, it becomes so elitist that we forget that the people who are really affected. Why I choose this is that if you ask someone who lives in the town or who can afford pad, they don't understand this narrative. They don't understand this conversation. And they'll be wondering, what are you talking about period poverty? But when you really get to understand this thing is when you work at community level or when you meet people who cannot afford even the water to clean up, right? So they may have maybe using rags to hold the period, but they cannot afford the water. And meanwhile, there are the people who are responsible for the provision of water, or collection of water for household use. Yet they cannot use that same water as much as they would want. That is when you understand the depth and magnitude of what we are talking about. And so, for those of us who are in the cities, for those of us who can afford to buy a pad, this conversation may sound strange and may not be helpful. And it may also be very easy if you're working at that level. But how do you get to the community and explain to a mother who had gone through the same process, apparently without any towels, may have used rag, or sometimes we've heard stories, for instance, in rural Kenya, where girls had to sit outside on the sand so that their blood can drop into the sand and stay there days on end. That is when you begin to understand the depth of work and the depth of issue that we're raising in this conversation. So I think that the starting point will then be to begin to empower mothers and women with information, right? That you had used rag or you had used sand, things have changed. And begin to get them to understand the issues, to understand the dimensions that they as mothers, for instance, I had once menstruated and I have also been in that shoe. So I understand it to be able to help my own daughter. So if you come from that consciousness, it helps the women to understand that they need to empower themselves, they need to organize in collective, and also begin to change the narratives that promote discrimination and exclusion. A typical example, Peace raised this, and Dr. Ibrahim, who just also spoke, also raised these issues, how period stigmatization and period sanctions, the way it interconnects and it affects how girls see themselves or even thrive in the society. And so the narrative has been that if you're in menses, you are unclean. Certain religions promote that, and Peace alluded that's to begin to change those narratives. And it is now our work as social development experts, especially those who are advancing the gender equality agenda, to begin to support these mothers to understand this at this rural level, to be able to change those narratives and create that there is dignity in playing and reproducing this, because it's like Doctor said, it's a natural phenomenon. It's part of being a female, right? For some females, of course, we understand that there are also other constraints in terms of perhaps those who don't menstruate because of the way they were created, per se. So we need to begin to help them in organizing. An experience we've done in where I work, we have women peer education program, where we organize women in collectives and allow them to discuss issues through a law literate manual that helps them from a pictorial perspective, these issues, to understand these issues, to have these conversations. They are difficult conversations. People don't want to have those conversations. To begin to organize themselves, to look at those issues and see how they can collectively organize themselves to begin to change those narratives at the community level. Being on menstruation is not an unholy thing, does not reduce one's holiness per se, and in the way it's being promoted. Finally, on the question around role of mothers in preparing the youth for prevention, I cannot agree more with Dr. Ibrahim when he talked about getting men and boys involved in this conversation, in this fight, right? Mothers need to teach their children, especially boys as well, not just the girls, because sometimes we focus so much attention in preparing the girls, their menstruation, and we leave the boys. The boys tend to grow up into men. They may, depends on their location, may decide on how resources are being shared within the family and whether they should allocate resources to buying of pad or to such essentials for girls. So they need to understand it. They need to even learn how to support their wives, because we've seen situations where some girls, when they are menstruating, or women when they're menstruating, they have pains, just like Doctor has described. How, if the boy has not been prepared long enough to understand this, how would he then support his wife or his partner, per se? So I believe that on both sides of the divide, they need the information to prepare them to be able to support the females as much as the females are being prepared on the journey of the menstrual cycle. Like I said in my opening segment, my second point is about that the women themselves need to learn. The girls also need to learn. This is where our work as actors, as activists, should challenge us to work from a more strategic and inclusive way to be able to actualize the goal that we have set for ourselves in this area. How do we increase knowledge? How do we get people to begin to see these issues from a very strategic point of view and not see it as a tokenism, as oh, we are helping women or we're just getting them to understand? No, this is a political issue, as far as I'm concerned, that we must come together in collective to demand for recognition of these issues. And one of the ways, somebody dropped this in the comments section, and I agree completely and totally with the person. We need to seek for reduction in taxations for sanitary towels, for instance. Some countries have done that and achieved it. How can we get our legislators to begin to understand? And it also boils down to, beyond, just like Peace has also alluded to, If we have many number of women elected in the political positions and are representing us at the National Assembly, it will be much more easier to advance these issues and our own agenda. Because if somebody who doesn't know where the shoe pains, he will tell you, oh, why don't you walk straight? Why don't you walk curved? He has not walked their shoe, so he doesn't understand that. So it also refers me to the point that I have earlier made. So we need to begin to push and advance for that in terms of making sanitary towels tax-free in this country. The second point, in terms of our working in collective and organizing, is to begin to demand for safe environments where no girl, I mean, it's so shameful that we still have in this day and time where girls have to drop out of school because of menstruation, because there is no watch services within the school, because they will get stained, and because the boys will laugh at them, or begin to self-stigmatize themselves and self-restrict themselves from going to school. And we know what that means. That means in every month, if you calculate the number of days, for some girls it's 3 days, for them, so for others it's 5 days. You can imagine every 5 days in a month, you remove it from a school calendar. That means if it's a, let's take the average of 4 days, in 3 months of a school calendar, that means for 12 days of that school calendar, a girl drops out of school because of menstruation. That's if we're taking a girl who sees her menstruation regularly on a monthly basis. So these are genuine issues that we need to begin to demand. What are we doing as an organizations, as actors, in relation to education and ensuring that educational environment is safe for the girls, that there are parts in every toilet? This is the role of mothers, and mothers can begin to push that, right? As I am now, as an educated mother, as a privileged mother, I ensure that my daughters, as they are going, their sanitary towels are packed for them, are provided for them. Then we should also think that those who are at the rural level also require this support to be able to get their daughters to have what they require in living their life to the fullest. So I believe, and I join my voice with all the other speakers to say that this is a collective responsibility. This is the work that all of us as actors, not just as mothers, but as actors, need to wake up to be able to respond to. It is a demand that we will continually make. It's not just because today is the International Day for young persons. It's not just because we single out a single day for menstrual hygiene or for menstrual hygiene demands, but it's a continuous issue that needs to be brought to the front burner of national discourse until people begin to realize and understand the strategic importance of this. Thank you so much, Nkechi and their team for the beautiful work they are doing. And thank you everyone who have spoken before me and those who will speak afterwards. But as a mother, I know what it is. As a female, first and foremost, I know what it is to go through the journey of menstruation and to the journey, because it's interlinked and connected to the journey of life. I know what it is as a mother who has 3 girls who are currently living their lives or in that step of journey. I know what it is. And so for all of us, it is a call to action and a clear call for us to stand up and ensure that our girls are not excluded from education, from other opportunities because of menstruation. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mrs. Nkechi. Like, this was an awesome delivery. Like, it is undoubtedly that every single person literally needs to be involved in menstruation. Menstruation is everybody's business. And for such an awesome, illuminating delivery, we appreciate you. Thank you so much for availing yourself on this section. We don't take it for granted. Thank you so much. So
Thank
our
you,
last
it's an honor.
speaker.
Thank you, it's
so
an
much.
honor.
Thank you so much, man. So our last speaker will be Rizma Boots. Now, first thing first, I would want to appreciate the fact that Wisma, you stayed up to this time, considering your time disposition as it affects your time over where you're joining us from. Yeah, and your impromptu availability despite your various trips, yes, from the US up to the Canada. We'll appreciate you so much. Thank you so much. So Wisma will be talking us on our professional development of teachers impacts youth engagement as it relates to period poverty. Over to you, Wisma.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Rizma Bad. First of all, I would actually say that I'll put my video off because of the same internet issue going on. I'm actually traveling in the transit, going towards the airport. I have to catch a flight as well. But I would say, first of all, thank you for having me at this amazing event. And I would say the guest speakers so far have done a tremendous job, and I'm actually blown away. And I'm so glad to be a part of a discussion where we are talking about period poverty, which is actually a stigma, which is people don't talk about. And we all need to talk about. It's not about just talking with the girls, but all the genders need to be involved in this conversation. And I'm glad I see people other than women part of this webinar today. Like I said, I'm delighted to be here today. And I would like to share my perspective on empowering youth and how the impact of a teacher professional development on youth engagement in context of the period poverty. Now, we all need to understand this is a very essential topic that needs to be addressed both on the educational advancement and on the social justice level. Now, before I would dive into the role of teacher professional development, let's ensure that we are all on the same page about period poverty and its significance. I am originally from Pakistan, and from being a country which is a developing country itself and understand the importance of period poverty, what it is. I have been fortunate enough not to go through period poverty, but I have seen it around me. I have been helping people around me when it comes to period poverty. And education on periods, on menstruation lacks big time in our culture, in our country as well. And I did hear stories from other speakers as well, where women, girls, are considered unhygienic, are considered someone who should not sit with their family, should not be around the food or the place when they are going their menstruation period, which is true. And I've seen it myself as well. And I have been blown away by the aspect why this is such a big stigma. Why are they not considered like a normal person when they're going through their period? Even talking about period or talking about menstruation with your mother at your early stage of your childhood is a big shock for mothers themselves. And they tend to actually tell their girls, well, talk about it when the time comes. And what happens when they go through their period, they are overwhelmed. They don't know how to actually handle the situation they're going through. And honestly, I have gone through this myself as well when I was a kid. Now, in my perspective, when I talk about period poverty, I refer to it as lack of access to menstrual products, education, and proper menstrual hygiene management. Primary, I would say the reason that I've seen is because of the financial constraint, lack of education. Now, it affects countless young individuals worldwide and across Africa, and it's actually extend the limitations and goes beyond the limitations of economics. Now, period poverty directly impacts young engagement in various ways. When young people face barriers such as inadequate access to menstrual products or feel ashamed due to societal stigmas, their ability to actively engage in their education and the community activities can severely be hindered. And we have seen that. We have some such passionate girls who want to do beyond academic performance and are not able to take part in other activities when they're going through their menstrual period. Now, this has a ripple effect on three things: their academic performance, their mental well being, and the overall confidence. Many girls drop out of school altogether once they begin menstruating. And I'll ask this question to everybody today in the audience, that should young women miss 20% of the school days in a given year due to lack of facilities or lack of information or because of lack of sanitary products? And for me, my answer would be a big no. They should not. This is not something which is different. That's pretty normal and natural. And I would put in another stat, which was a bit shocking as well, which was actually put out by UNESCO, which was that 1 out of every 10 menstruating young students miss school during their period cycle. And that's because of lack of access of the products and resources. They don't have it. And I would say, for example, people on the menstruation in developing parts of the world, such as sub-Saharan Africa, are prone to using paper, old cloth, some places leaves, cotton, or wool pieces rather than more traditional products that are out there, which are disposable pads or tampons or reusable cups that are actually out there. Many schools in developing nations have insignificant toilets and inadequate privacy measures, such as they don't have proper water, they don't have sanitation. Hygiene is a big problem, and it makes it really difficult for students to safely manage their menstrual cycle. We should care about menstrual hygiene management because it can further social and economic empowerment and youth. It can also contribute to achieving a number of sustainable development goals, which I would say would be not limited to the quality education, gender equality, and clean water and sanitation. Which brings me to teachers. Teachers are not just educators, they are mentors, they are role models, they are advocates for their students. As such, they possess a unique position to influence and empower young minds. Now, I will explore and actually talk about how teacher professional development can make a significant impact in addressing period poverty and promoting young engagement. Now, teacher professional development is continuous process of improving teacher skills, knowledge, and pedagogical approaches. It plays a critical role in creating an inclusive and supportive environment for all the students, especially those affected by period poverty. So now, how effective professional development can directly influence young engagement in context of period poverty? I'll talk about 4 things, and I'll quickly go over it because I know I'll be running out of time otherwise. Number 1 being awareness, number 2 being advocacy, number 3 education, and number 4 being resources. If I talk about awareness, teachers educated about period poverty can reduce stigma. They can promote empathy, and they can create an atmosphere where young individuals feel understood and supported. I would say this is number 1. Number 2, advocacy. Now, equipped with knowledge, what can teachers do? They can become advocates for their students and ensure the needs are met and provided essential support as well. Number 3, education. Professional development empowers teachers to educate their students about menstrual health, which contributes towards breaking down taboos and ensuring proper hygiene practices. We as teachers are also sometimes hesitant to talk about menstrual process or even talk about period poverty with our students. It's all because of the stigma that we have in our society these days. And lastly, I would say teachers with right resources, they can help bridge the gap by ensuring access to menstrual products. Now, thus removing a significant obstacle to regular attendance. And I would say, being a teacher, being a professor myself, I can, and the teachers in my company can play a vital role in actually contributing towards this. And lastly, I would say and highlight the practical strategies that teachers can implement to address period poverty and enhance youth engagement would be inclusive curriculum by incorporating menstrual health topics into the curriculum, normalizing the conversations, and dispelling the myths that are out there about periods. Second, access to products. Advocate for and ensure the availability of menstrual products in schools, reducing the burden on the students, which could hence increase their attendance. Safe place. Teachers can create a supportive, non-judgmental environment where students can come in and discuss openly about the problems and feel safe. And lastly, I would say community engagement. Collaborate with local organizations to amplify the efforts in addressing period poverty and building a network of support for students. Now, the professional development of teachers has a profound impact on addressing period poverty and fostering young or youth, I would say, engagement. Now, by empowering teachers with knowledge, resources, and strategies, we can create a more equitable and supportive environment for our youth. And we need to remember that change begins with education and awareness. We need to actually work together. And we need to remember, as young or youth leaders, advocates, and change makers, we hold the power to reshape our society's approach when it comes to menstrual equality. Together, we can break down barriers, we can shatter the stigmas, and ensure that every person, regardless of their gender, has access to menstrual products and, most importantly, education as well. We need to work together. So I would request everybody today that let's actually work together to empower our youth and eliminate period poverty. Thank you so much.
Wow. Isma, thank you so much. 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 Once again, it was really so inconveniencing for you, but yet you availed yourself. I would personally want to reflect on your concept that teachers literally also should and can be applicable to mothers. Even as mothers, we are teachers in our capacity as mothers. As fathers, we are teachers in our best capacities. Even as siblings, we are teachers in also our best capacities. So in our various capacities where we have a significant figure of the teacher figure, let's engage our youths, let's engage solemnly, passionately, effortlessly, selflessly into period poverty. Thank you so very much, Rizma. We appreciate you. Thank you for being part of this impactful section. God bless you.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Nkechi?
Yeah. Thank you so much for the thought-provoking conversations. Honestly, I've been thinking, I've been meditating, and I've been trying to really internalize the conversation so far. So now the floor is open for conversations. If you have questions, if you have comments, please raise your hand and we'll call you to quickly make your contributions. our speakers are still online to respond to them. But if you want to use the chat box, you can do that. Please, let's contribute. Questions, comments. There is a comment from Stella. She said, it is said that if men menstruate, there will be a legislation on the provision of pads, sanitary products, and taxes will be taken off the provision of pad. The impact of this situation for women and girls with disabilities, it is yet to be interrogated. I agree with you, yes. So that's why we need to come together and form a synergy to address this issue, to also make sure that a legislation is in place to address the issue of period poverty. Any comments? Any question? Okay, Nicholas, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so as a very passionate involved male gender in period poverty, literally, it's a really an eliminating transformative section. In addition to the overwhelming impactful knowledge we've gotten from our various speakers, this is me charging us in my capacity right now that even as single fathers, or let me just even reiterate on the comment someone made. I am also in a strong conviction that we need even the little female lawmakers we have to be actively involved in period poverty. Like we should be able to have more compelling policies as it relates to period poverty. Like in the house, the House of Assembly should get aware of the fact that there is a prevailing crisis, there is a prevailing violence, there is a prevailing plight and pain associated to the female gender. Because if there is no voice being made out there, like I doubt if there will be a reflection of action to be considered or taken. So in as much as we are wanting to build a formation where we have more female genders in the lawmaking sector, let's also create a reconstruction awareness to the female lawmakers we have presently right now, to be more agitated, to be more in tuned, to be more involved into raising the awareness in the house. Yes. And lastly, okay, maybe let me just leave the comment section for time constraint for other persons to just make their contribution.
Thank you so much, Nicholas. There is a question from Abdul Basit. How appropriate is the use of reusable sanitary pads? Looking from a hygienic point of view, what ways can the pads be best used for best results? So I don't know which of our speakers will want to address this.
I'm sure the doctor can add some in terms of the medical perspective. But broadly, I know that due to the current, the cost related to buying disposable parts, there has been an ongoing conversation. In fact, many countries, I saw it in Liberia, I saw it in Nigeria, where reusable pad is being used or promoted, right? Again, it's in terms of its relation to availability and what people are used to, because if you are bringing in technology, it's also consider the technology in relation to country context. But if we are talking about the questions or concerns around its health, how hygienic, if we have wash available in terms of water flowing, than people having to go to stream to fetch water, or also having water poverty, we wouldn't be raising this question, right? So I think, again, going back to my point and answering you directly, is that I think what can help us is that, in addition, because that's why I spoke to the issues of intersectionality, you can't pick one and leave the other. So you can't pick issues of pad and then leave the issue of water. You can't pick the issue of access to education and leave the other issue of other interrelated issues. So approaching that from that perspective will help us and also ensure that even if people are using reusable pad, there is water for them to be able to clean up and then also keep themselves safe in terms of that. Yes, I will allow the doctor and as well others to add their voice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Nkechi. Dr. Ibrahim, please add up to that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. That was an interesting question because if we don't use the parts, the reusable ones properly, they may exacerbate that process of infection. So most of the parts that are advocated are those that are from cotton materials. So they last over a period of 4 to 5 years. But you need to be checking them regularly. Those that have, pockets or they have holes within them, then it means even if they don't last up to that duration, you may need to change them. And how often would a girl or a woman change that reusable pad per day? Changing it per day depends on the how heavy her cycle is. That's why we emphasize the issue of information and education. A girl may change between 1 to even up to 6 pads a day, and it's normal because the flow varies. So how do you know when to change the pad? I would say, from the health point of view, is that when it starts to feel a bit weight on your body, it means it's time to change that pad, within that day. So you've worn in the morning, and then probably by afternoon it starts to feel weight in the body. It means it's time to change that particular one. And so that's more about how heavy your flow is. So for those who have less heavy flow, or at the beginning or end of the flow days when it is even it gets slower, it means you will use less parts than you used previously. Then care of the parts, they mostly come with straps. You can be able to wash them like you wash every underwear with soap and water and your antiseptics that you use to wash your other underwears. So it goes the same way of hygiene of underwears. You wash it and you air dry it. It's good to always air dry it under the sun so that it kills the possibility of any colonizing microorganisms. Just to further recap that you look out for if it starts to wear and tear by having holes or pockets within it, then it means it's about time to change it. Or if peradventure at a certain time of your period there was possibility of infection and it's that reusable parts starts to carry with it a certain odor even after wash, it means you need to change that part. But in essence, it could last up to 4 to 5 years. So if you have a couple of them, you could have a very safe period time using them. Thank you. I hope that answers the question that was raised.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ibrahim. Thank you. For want of time, we have some comments in this comment section. According to Victoria, she said reduction of tax rates on menstrual hygiene products by the Nigerian government would go a long way to combat period poverty. Because if menstrual hygiene products are sold at an accessible rate, we would solve half of the problem. But Vivian Efembasi, one of our mentors, has something else to say, and it's really, really thought-provoking. She said, when advocating for availability to pads, either through subsidized, sorry, my screen has gone off, either through subsidized costs, removal of taxes, or even at no cost, consideration should be given to the quality of the sanitary pads that will be made available in the response to these efforts. There is a tendency for companies to produce low-quality products that end up affecting girls and women adversely. honestly, I want to really agree with her, because we really need to look at it. What are the checks that we have in place to ensure that standard is maintained? So it's something that we really need to think about. I can see Yetunde's hand up. Yetunde, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Nkechi. So just in response to the question by one of the participants about reusable sanitary towels, I would say that from the little experience we have had working particularly in rural communities, we have seen that more than 50% of girls in these rural communities till now, they use clothes for their menstruation. And we've also seen cases whereby girls wash disposable sanitary pads, like the disposable napkins that mothers use for their kids, for their babies. They will rewash it. I don't really understand how they get to do it, but they kind of rewash it, spread it, and then we use it again. That is the disposable parts. So if that is what is happening and we are able to provide reusable sanitary towels for girls in rural communities, providing them with robust education, sensitization on how to use it, we're considering the fact that till now they are using clothes for their menstruation. I think providing that has made a lot of ways, for a lot of girls in rural communities, particularly for me, that we work in those kind of settings. Thank you, and over.
Thank you, Yetunde. In the absence of Nicholas, your hand is still raised. Do you want to speak, or it's the initial one?
No, yeah. I would want to add up to Abdul Basit
Okay.
review on the reusable parts. Yeah, and considering our involvement basically in period poverty, I would first thing first would like to awaken our consciousness on the fact that the most vulnerable target audiences as it pertains period poverty is reflected on girls and women in rural communities, prisons, girls and women in IDP camps and shelters. Now, let's also consider the Nigeria factors, where in these rural communities, they hardly have access to good water sanitations. Now, when they go to the stream, yeah, now I am in a very strong opinion that even having to wash these usable sanitary pads with the waters from the stream can be contaminating. And now also from our engagements, also from these girls in the rural communities. Now, one of the reasons why most of them ends up having heavy flow is because basically they are subject to hard work and hard labor. So they end up having heavy flows. And most times this is if they are subject to the visible parts, like in a community where we visited, they are always in the farm. Most times they sleep in the farm. Now, you're going to end up getting to know right now that now they'll be subject to stress, which in other words gets them subject to an heavy flow. Now, if they are on this visible parts, rather, as it were, even when they are all soaked up, most of them don't even care to even want to even have to change. Now, even if they want to even have to wash up, they're not even disposable to good water sanitation. So, like in my strong opinion, just like somebody said, it is one thing wanting to create impact, and in our quest to create impact, let's be so central and sensitive, not even add more complications, not even add more damages in our quest of wanting to create impact.
Thank you so much, Nicholas. Please, you have your hand up. Please, you can go on.
Okay. Nkechi, good afternoon once again. Although I wanted to obtain permission so that I can join another meeting, but then I must say something very important. From our conversation this afternoon, that organized this program, coming up with not just talk to, but we see action towards if it requires writing to lawmakers on the need for the country to see this as a need. end period poverty. I think I would see that happen as to from our an action that we bring to result of what we have already discussed today or what we are discussing already. But then I would like to take excuse myself to join another meeting.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for staying with us this far. We really, really appreciate you. I'll hand over to Yetunde. We are almost rounding up. You can just like 5 minutes. We are